Man-made. These divisions, they are man-made. We have vice. We have vice, but we cannot see. We got to find a new way to be. This is a worldwide Black family. No matter where you're from, Africa is still your home. Cuban or Dominican or Panamanian. No matter where you're from, Africa is still your home. Jamaican or American, Haitian or Brazilian. One Africa. All around the world. One Africa. All around the world. Get free. The time has come for us to get free. It's time we break the chains of slavery. We got to find a new way to be. This is a worldwide Black family. No matter where you're from, Africa is still your home. Mexican, Colombian, or Boricano. No matter where you're from, Africa is still your home. Belizean or Peruvian, or Honduran. One Africa. All around the world. One Africa. All around the world. They don't wanna see us unite. All they want us to do is keep on fussing and fighting. They don't wanna see us live together. All they want us to do is keep on killing one another all around the world. One Africa. 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 We got to find a new way to be. This is a worldwide Black
What me say?
family.
Proud to be Black, I'm an African. From higher heights, me militant. West Africa, me from an Vatican. We were born with the light, we under the sun. Repatriation is a must if you liberate yourself. We tired of the war and fight. Cause there is nothing you can do. Know yourself and know your history. Work out for uplift to new life. Freedom we need. God, me say, mother of civilization. Peace to the world. One love, my religion. Together we are gonna build up the nation. No matter where you come from, we are one blood. Accept one another whenever you touch road. Listen me, see links to the globe. All for one for all, so the thing go.
We got to find a new way to be. This is a worldwide Black family. Greetings. Hello, everybody.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. We are back live. That's right. I am like talking to y'all as the stream is going. So if you talk to me, I could see it and respond. But greetings. My name is Onyesanu. I am a cadre member of the All African People's Revolutionary Party, and this is Pan-African News. This is a weekly program that APIP New Mexico chapter puts on every single Thursday at 12 p.m. Mountain Time. We started it at the beginning of the pandemic back in March of 2020. Man, it's been a long time of this pandemic, huh? It's been a long time. But we started this back in March of 2019 because we wanted to continue to build that community, continue to provide political education, continue to talk to y'all about the work we're doing and about why Africa must be primary in the struggle for African liberation. But we didn't want to do it in person because we didn't want anybody to catch COVID at our events. And so this weekly program is one of many ways that New Mexico chapter came up with to adapt to the new reality. So we thank y'all so much for joining us. We have some regular viewers who are here every single week, and we deeply appreciate y'all. But as I said, my name is Onyesanu. This show is Weekly Pan-African News, and it's presented to you by the All African People's Revolutionary Party New Mexico chapter. If you're not familiar with the All African People's Revolutionary Party, or the APRP, we are a revolutionary, Pan-African, socialist political party founded in Africa, based in Africa, with chapters throughout the African world, with the political objective of Pan-Africanism, which we define as one unified socialist Africa, because we believe when Africa is free, Africans everywhere will be free. Also, I got a ring light because I got a new computer and the webcam really is terrible. And so I was hoping that it would stop like the color adjustment, but I like move when I talk and it gets lighter and darker. Sorry. But good morning, Marion. Good morning, Sam. Good morning, Sally Foo. If I didn't say it right, you better correct me, comrade. Good morning, Logan. Good morning, Kevin. Good morning, Bird. It's really great to see y'all. We are back live, so I can say hi to you. But we do two things. Well, first and foremost, I have exactly 1 hour to do this show because I have a meeting at work at 1 o'clock. So I have exactly 1 hour, and we have a lot of things to discuss. We have the conclusion of the class struggle in African America presentation from the last show. We have a little bit of discussion about colonialism, women, and marginalized genders. We have some updates on exciting work that APIP New Mexico is doing. We have, I want to give y'all a brief promo of a really cool event that I'm going to be participating in on Sunday. And then we also have just like a brief word about the George Floyd trial that's obviously unfolding right now. And a revolutionary Pan-African perspective on that, as well as some discussion about hood communists, because hood communists got attacked. We have to do all of that in 60 minutes. Can I do it? Can I do it? I know y'all believe me, so let's get it popping. So every single show, we do two things. We start off two ways. First and foremost, we want to call in an ancestor. And the reason why we call in an ancestor is because we understand, as revolutionary African people, as people in the struggle for Pan-Africanism, as people fighting for African liberation, that we are contributing to a struggle that began centuries ago, that began the very first moment the very first European colonizer set foot on the shores of Africa and has been continuing ever since. We are not reinventing the wheel. We are not starting a new movement. We are building upon a very, very, very old movement, which means our ancestors are the people that laid the groundwork that made it possible for us to do this work today. And so we honor them. We thank them for their contributions, for their sacrifices, for their brilliance, for their struggle, because without that, we would not be here. I would not be here talking to y'all without the sacrifices of my ancestors. And that's why we lift them up. And then the other part of the reason why we lift them up is simply because if you are a revolutionary African person in a capitalist society, you are going to be lied on. They are going to lie about you on a very basic level. And so this is an opportunity for us to briefly tell the truth about some of these revolutionary African ancestors that made it possible for us to be here today. So today we have two, and I'm going to do this really quickly because we have 60 minutes. But we have two ancestors. First up is Gil Scott Heron. His birthday is actually today. Gil Scott Heron, if you have not heard that name before, is the author of the very famous poem, "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised." He was an African revolutionary cultural worker. He was a jazz musician. He was very, very, very prescient when it came to the writing of that and presentation of that poem, because we are living in a moment where people are absolutely trying to televise the revolution. People are like making Cadillac commercials and calling it revolution. So he truly called the current political moment in that piece. And so we celebrate him today. The second ancestor that we want to call in is Mama Winnie Mandela. The anniversary of her passing is actually tomorrow. She died April. Actually, no, it's today. It's today. She died April 1st, 2018, so a few years ago. But Winnie Mandela was, of course, a member of the African National Congress, a leading figure in the armed struggle against settler colonialism and apartheid in Tanzania, also known as South Africa. She was someone who was a revolutionary from the day she was born to the day she died. Someone who, even as a lot of her comrades in the ANC sold out all around her, let's just be straight up, they sold out all around her, she never did. She never did. She once said that she was the creation of the masses of her people and of her struggle, and she embodied that every single moment of her life. And for that reason, she was demonized on the world stage. She was called a terrorist. She was called a fanatic. She was lied on. She was made to apologize for fighting against settler colonialism in her land, and she refused to. So yeah, she was a badass. She was a bad bitch. Like a bad bitch is like the highest compliment that I could personally pay someone. I don't know if people are offended when I call her that, but that to me is like a very great expression of love. But yes, Mama Winnie Mandela, we celebrate you today. We celebrate your sacrifice. We celebrate all revolutionary African women who refuse to assimilate into the system and instead spend their lives fighting it just like she did. So those are the two ancestors. The second thing that we always do at the beginning of every single show is we want to acknowledge that we are on stolen land. We are on stolen land. I am speaking to y'all from occupied Tiwa territory, also known as Albuquerque, New Mexico. Albuquerque is the name that Spanish colonizers gave to the land they stole from the indigenous peoples of the Southwest. The entire Western Hemisphere is stolen indigenous land. Quite a bit of Africa is stolen indigenous land. Palestine is stolen indigenous land. Australia is stolen indigenous land. All stolen land around the world must be returned to the rightful owners. When we say land back, when we do a land acknowledgement, that is not a metaphorical statement. We are literally saying that we are going to fight to get our land back in Africa, and we are going to contribute to the fight of the indigenous nations of the Western Hemisphere to get their land back here. Period. Point blank. Not a metaphor. Land back. So, did that fast. Hopefully y'all can understand me. Folks are saying Winnie was a G. Correct. Marion saying Winnie, I can't say her full name. It's terrible. But yes, Mama Winnie Mandela, let's celebrate her. Yes, we're on stolen land. So, that was the intro. That was pretty good. It took a little too long. So let's see if we can do it faster. But on the previous week of this show, we presented the first part of a presentation that we like to call Class Struggle in African America for the political education portion of the program. We had to cut it off. So we tried to do last week, pre-record it, and it was like kind of janky. But y'all bared with us. And so we did the first part of that presentation. In that presentation, we basically discussed how, despite the fact that the masses of African people in the United States are overwhelmingly poor and working class, the people who are elevated to represent us in the mainstream are very often wealthy and completely removed from our communities. Very often they are entertainers. Very often they are hip hop artists, but not the hip hop artists that created the genre of hip hop, because those folks were poor and working class. No, the hip hop artists that are elevated to speak on behalf of the masses of African people are wealthy sellouts. They are wealthy sellouts who are ultimately controlled by wealthy right-wing European men and transnational media corporations that decide which of these wealthy African sellouts is going to be elevated into that position to speak for us. So we broke down why that's happening. We broke down the consequences of that. We broke down the reality situation in the United States, which is that the masses of African people are poor and the people speaking for us are not us. They are not of us. They are completely separated from us and they're trying to talk for us. And we also broke down how very often these wealthy African sellouts have straight up reactionary politics. They are anti-dark skinned people. They hate themselves. They hate African women. They push materialism. They are counter-revolutionary. Jay-Z, for example, compared himself to Fred Hampton. Nicki Minaj compared herself to Harriet Tubman and Malcolm X. I'm just like, y'all are tripping. These are people who very often have right-wing reactionary politics, and that's the reason why they get the platform. That's the reason why they are elevated. They're not actually speaking for us. They are speaking for the system that gave them their wealth, the capitalist and colonial system. So that's like a very brief summary of what we went through in the previous slides last week. And now I'm going to change the view. I'm going to disappear. But you'll still be able to hear me, and I'll still be here. And we're just going to very quickly finish this presentation and then go on to the next portion of our PE. So without further ado, let's... Hello, hi! So now you should be able to see a black and white screen that says "Faking the Funk." And hopefully you can still hear me. If you cannot still hear me, definitely let me know in the comments. If you have any issues seeing or hearing anything that's happening, let me know in the comments, and I will try to address. But anywho, so this is the conclusion of class struggle in African America, talking about the class contradictions within the African community in the United States, talking about these fake-ass, wealthy African sellouts that are elevated within the entertainment industry and then put forward to speak for us. We're going to be talking about how very often the persona that these Africans put forward in the world does not actually reflect who they are. And let me see what y'all saying. Y'all say hip-hop artists like Nas disappointed me. He is not the worst, though. That would be Jay-Z. Agree. Kwame says Africans must continue to fight back for our land to get rid of these illegal demons of Europe and America out of Africa. Agree. And then Max says you can hear me, and Logan says it looks and sounds great. I appreciate y'all. Okay, so without further ado, Faking the Funk, Studio Gangsters. So on the slide we have pictured African American hip hop artist Ice Cube. On the picture on the left is him during like the NWA times, and the picture on the right is him in the present day. Ice Cube is the perfect example of these wealthy artists that are elevated, that are faking the funk. Because Ice Cube came into the world talking about fuck the police, talking about we're in the hood and they're attacking us, correctly analyzing the police as an occupying force when he was younger, when he was making that bank. And now in 2021, now this man regularly plays police in major Hollywood pictures. How do you go from fuck the police to playing the police in like several movies? I can think of off the top of my head like at least 6 different movies where this man played a police officer. And on top of that, Ice Cube, as he moved right wing, I know, Sam says, damn, I agree. But Ice Cube, you know, he got like a lot of smoke this past summer because he like came up with this like bitch ass plan for Black America where he's talking about small business loans and all kind of hot bullshit for the petty bourgeois. And he took this bitch ass plan to the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. And the Democratic Party was like, get out of our face because they don't give a fuck. And the Republican Party was like, sure, we'll meet. And so like something happened where like some Trump administration figure like met with him and everybody's all mad at Ice Cube. And I was like, it would have been the same bullshit if he had met the Democratic Party. But also, why the fuck is sellout ass, cop playing ass, Ice Cube negotiating on behalf of the masses of African people and asking for nothing but reforms that will benefit the petty bourgeois? Like, who the fuck elected Ice Cube, our leader or our representative, to speak with the U.S. government? Who asked you to do that, sir? Who asked you to do that? Anywho, another example of fake-ass gangster who came into the industry rapping about being a cop killer, rapping about being fuck the police, and now plays the police every single Thursday evening on Law & Order SVU is Ice-T. And so let's watch this brief video of Ice-T straight up lying on the Arsenio Hall show.
You fucking for Colors? Yeah, it was funny because after we did I did the soundtrack for Colors and stuff, and then all of a sudden I got a call from Congress, the Black Caucus, to come out there and talk to them about drugs and gangs. So they got all these politicians sitting on this big thing, and here I am sitting up there in a silk shirt and a Kango, you know, cooling like this. And they like, all right, everybody spoke, all these doctors and stuff, and they said, I-T, why are they gangs and drugs, you know? I said, all you fools sitting in here and gonna ask me, and you know exactly why there's gangs and drugs, because you don't care about it, you know what I'm saying? And the gang situation in Los Angeles has been here 20 years. And then a lady got killed in Westwood, you know, a non-black, and somebody out of the neighborhood, and all of a sudden there were 387 murders that year and 70,000 gang members. And I said, they didn't join that night, you know what I'm saying? Now, you used to be a gang member, right? Well, I was involved with gangs. When I went to Crenshaw High School, and when you got to that school, it was kind of like you either with us or without us. And down in the neighborhood, I mean, everybody is affiliated with gangs. Even little girls walk down the street and somebody will say, well, what set lives here? And they say, well, this is the Crips, and this is the Bloods. And they know what their mama tells them what color to wear. And it's something that as you grow up, you just learn. So everybody from my neighborhood or down in South Central Los Angeles is affiliated with gangs. I was never a hardcore member that was like, let's go out and kill people. But I used to roll with the sets, and I know what makes them tick. You know what I'm saying? I was just lucky, you know.
We don't have to watch the whole video because he straight up lies for like 5 minutes. But one thing you should know about Ice-T is that he grew up in the suburbs. He was upper middle class. He certainly did move to Crenshaw when he was like a teenager, but he was still upper middle class. And if you notice, when Arsenio Hall asked him, were you ever in a gang? He was like, well, I was affiliated, and he looked mad, motherfucking nervous. This man is bald-faced lying. He is bald-faced lying. He is far from the only one that does this. These Africans that are elevated to represent us, that find wealth within this system by selling us out, put forward this image that they do not live. They weren't living it then, and they're not living it now. There's a reason why these Africans that pushed this music that was antisocial, that was violent as fuck, beyond like the fuck the police messages, it was like anti-woman, and it was antisocial as fuck. They push these messages, they are elevated to push these messages, and they don't even fucking live that life, y'all. They do not even live that life. This man is a cop every single Thursday evening. Every single Thursday evening, after saying fuck the police for like 10, 20 years. Shit makes no sense. Makes no sense. They're all perpetrated. Anyway, this is a slide that a comrade Demetria added about Gucci Mane. Gucci Mane, of course, used to be fluffy. Then he went to jail. He used to be fluffy and a lot of drugs. And drank a lot of shit. And then he went to jail. Then he came out and he was like all buff. And people started saying he was a clone. He's not a clone. He just worked out a lot in jail, yo. But anyway, he came out and he was still singing the same songs, even though he was sober, even though he was living healthy, even though he married a beautiful woman and was like, I'm a happy man now, he was still singing songs like the lyrics captured on the slide that are mostly listened to by young African people, by youth, talking about I drink till I'm drunk, I smoke till I'm high, talking about taking perks, talking about taking drugs, talking about living that gangster life that he is no longer living. So again, these Africans, these wealthy African sellouts that don't even align with us in Black Lives Matter, in our struggles against police terrorism, these wealthy African sellouts that are elevated by this right-wing industry put forward an image that is antisocial and destructive that they themselves do not even live. Do not even live. And damn right I'm going after Gucci Mane, Erica. I think he's fine as hell, but I think that's some bullshit. I think that's some bullshit for you to say I drink till I'm drunk and have like 14-year-olds singing that, but you don't live that life because you know that wasn't healthy for you. That's fucked up. But that is the kind of artist that is elevated by the music industry under capitalism. It's not people that are going to sing messages that we need to hear as an oppressed and colonized people. It's people who are going to sing antisocial, destructive, materialist, counter-revolutionary messages that are going to be elevated, regardless of whether or not they are living that life. Anyway, and Gucci Mane is fine as hell though. He is really attractive to me. Anyway, so to conclude, hip-hop began within the poor and working class masses of African people, particularly African youth. It began as a form of cultural resistance, and it should be reclaimed as a form of cultural resistance. You are never going to hear me, or quite frankly, anyone in the APRP say that we should get rid of hip-hop, that we should abandon hip-hop. No, because hip-hop is ours. Hip-hop belongs to the masses of poor and working class African people. Hip-hop is about resistance. Hip-hop needs to return to those roots. So hip-hop as a genre belongs to us. It does not belong to these right-wing media corporations. It does not belong to Trump supporters like Lear Cohen that decide which African is going to be famous. It does not belong to right-wing Europeans. It does not belong to European kids in the suburbs that want to hear us thinking about killing ourselves. It belongs to the masses of poor, working-class African people and the masses of poor, working-class colonized peoples, period, that are fighting back against the system of oppression under capitalism and imperialism and colonialism. Hip-hop has long been the vessel we have used to tell our stories. We started with songs like The Message by Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, Fight the Power by Public Enemy, UNTY by Queen Latifah. Queen Latifah used to slap, man. And then we went from Fuck the Police by NWA and Definition by Black Star. We have always used music as African people to communicate with each other as a way of showing solidarity, to send a message out to the world about our struggles and conditions. Hip-hop is still being used in that way, particularly by artists like No Name, particularly like by artists like Boots Riley. Hip-hop can continue to be used in that way by the Movement for African Liberation. We do not have to concede hip-hop to sellouts and to the capitalist system. We can still use it as a tool of resistance, but we must be aware of these contradictions within the masses of African people. in the United States and around the world. And that was the presentation, y'all.
That was it. Hello. Hi, I'm back. And then other folks are giving examples of revolutionary African hip hop artists like Dead Prez, like Tupac. Tupac once performed at African Liberation Day that hosted by the PRP because he was that about the struggle. No Name, of course, I already mentioned. Immortal Technique, The Coup. I'm very partial to Bamboo, who is a Filipino hip hop artist that is anti-imperialist. So there are so many revolutionary hip hop artists, y'all, because the genre can still be used as a weapon of resistance. And that was the conclusion of class struggle in African America. So thank y'all. Keep the comments coming. I will keep engaging with you. We got to keep it moving because, like I said, we only have 60 minutes to do a lot of shit. So next up, we have a 2-part PE section on this week's episode. So that was the conclusion of class struggle in African America. And now we're going to move on to women, non-men, and colonialism. So I want to make a quick correction of the language that we used to advertise this PE segment. On the flyer, we said women, non-men, and colonialism. But I have since been corrected about the use of the term non-men. Because there are, for example, trans men, there are masculine of center non-binary people. There are also like colonized men who are oppressed on the basis of gender. And so the language of non-men, when you're trying to talk about people who are oppressed by patriarchy, is not precise enough and also ends up excluding some folks that are, in fact, oppressed on the basis of gender. Like I said, trans masculine people exist, y'all. So instead of saying non-men, what I say now is marginalized genders. So women, marginalized genders, colonialism. And so women are oppressed by patriarchy on the basis of gender and also nation and class if they are African or colonized. And also marginalized genders folks like queer and trans people, like non-binary people, trans masculine folks are included in that group of marginalized genders. And also to me, to be honest, I feel like I'm going to say this one day and someone's going to cuss me out. But to me, like African men, indigenous men, Chicano men, whether they're cis or trans, are in fact oppressed in both a gendered and a racialized way under patriarchy and capitalism and colonialism. And so when I say marginalized genders, it's inclusive of men. You can fight me if you want to, but I feel like the material reality of the situation is that it's just the case. It's just the case that they are oppressed in a gendered way. Like if you look at the specific condition of African men, how could you possibly argue that? But sometimes people get mad. Sometimes people get mad. Anyway, so let's talk about women, marginalized genders, and colonialism. First and foremost, you got to understand that gender is a social construct. When I say gender is a social construct, I mean that gender is constructed according to the specific way that a particular society is organized. Even though we are told by capitalism, by imperialism, by white supremacy that only 2 genders exist and they are constructed in a particular way, that is not the fucking case. Before they came to our shores, before they looted the world, before they stole our land, we had all different ways of constructing gender according to the ways that our society were organized. Indigenous societies before colonialism, African societies before colonialism, we all had, well, not all of them, not across the board, but most societies had a form of non-binary gender, had specific kinds of gender roles that were developed according to the construction of that particular society. It was not across the board all the same because it could not possibly be. Those societies were all constructed differently, which means they all had different understandings of what gender was. And then, of course, European colonizers came and they were like, no, man means you have a penis, woman means you have a vagina, woman means you wear a dress and you can't own shit, man means you run shit. That's what they did. They imposed that upon us by force through the process of colonization. But before they got here, that's not what it was, y'all. That's not what it was. And so when I say gender is a social construct, I am simply saying that gender as a concept is constructed according to the conditions where people live, the conditions of a particular society. And to prove that point or to further illustrate that point, I'm going to read a quote by author Butch Lee, who wrote the book Night Vision, which I highly recommend to get your mind blown. But Butch Lee says, Franz Fanon pointed out how colonialism compressed society's economic structure and cultural superstructure into one. You are rich because you are white because you are rich, he wrote. It is the truth of human society, not only that class struggle is the motive force of history, but that the dominant classes, the bourgeois classes, in their rise, must of necessity take over and redefine gender, nation, and race to their needs. Again, I'm going to read that again, the last line. It is the truth of human society, not only that class struggle is the motive force of history, but that the dominant classes, the bourgeois classes, in their rise must of necessity take over and redefine gender, nation, and race according to their needs. And so what that quote is saying is that when the European ruling class came to take over and steal land and exploit our labor and destroy our societies, they had to destroy the constructions that we had around gender and identity and remake them in their image in order to better assimilate us into this structure of exploitation. They destroyed our constructions of gender. They destroyed or attempted to destroy our constructions of national identity and race. They destroyed our religious practices or attempted to destroy our religious and cultural practices. And they redefined them in their own image in order to better facilitate our exploitation. The entire book, Night Vision, makes that argument very clearly for like less than 200 pages, I'm pretty sure. And she basically shows you systematically how they broke down what existed before and how they built it back up to serve capitalism. Once you understand that gender is a social construct, the same way that racial identity is a social construct, you begin to see how the way that gender is constructed under capitalism exists to serve capitalism. So I'm going to give you some specific examples. But first, I want to reiterate that what colonialism and capitalism did to gender was deconstruct what already existed, what we already had as our own indigenous practices, and reconstruct them for the purposes of colonialism. So when European colonizers came to Europe, when these crackers came, or when European colonizers came to Africa, when these crackers came to Africa, they destroyed our indigenous African gender constructions. Like I already said, many pre-colonial African societies had some conception of non-binary identity, some conception of queer identity, some conception of trans identity. We had that shit. We were living side by side. Even, society that had binary gender lived peacefully side by side with societies that had non-binary gender. It was no motherfucking problem until these crackers came and said, no, that's wrong. They criminalized non-binary and queer and trans identities. They erased them. They said they were immoral. They said they were, against God or whatever the fuck. And then they put in place their own binary capitalist gender constructions. They had to destroy what was already there and then put in place their own fuck shit. And now there's African people in 2021 imposing their European binary gender identities on other African people and calling that anti-colonial. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's just white shit. Also, if this is a surprise to you, surprise, AFRP New Mexico is on that gay shit. We're on that QT shit. Surprise! Anyway, so yeah, European colonizers came, destroyed the non-binary and queer and transgender identities that we had already had for thousands of years, imposed their own binary, biological-based understanding of gender. And when I say biological-based, it's like European constructions of biology as well. They divided our labor into productive and reproductive modes, and they devalued the reproductive mode of labor, and then they also concentrated wealth and power into the hands of people that they had gendered as men. And so the ultimate result of this process of deconstruction and reconstruction is the dispossession of African women and marginalized genders, also known as triple oppression. If you've never heard of triple oppression before, it is an idea put forward by Claudia Jones, also by Sekou Touré, also by many revolutionary African women who could just see the reality situation. Triple oppression basically means that African women and marginalized genders are oppressed on the basis of gender, nation, and class. 3/4 of oppression equals triple oppression. If it sounds similar to intersectionality, that's because it is. It's a very old concept. Some people are like, fuck intersectionality, and that's fine. You can say fuck whatever you want. But also understand that the ideas underneath intersectionality are actually very old. They've been put forward by revolutionary African women and marginalized genders for a very long ass time, because it's just like a very accurate way of describing our condition. So dispossession, the result of the deconstruction of our indigenous African gender constructions and the imposition of European capitalist gender constructions was, of course, the dispossession of African women and marginalized genders and the institution of triple oppression, meaning oppression on the basis of gender, nation, and class. It was also one of the other consequences of this deconstruction and reconstruction under European colonialism and capitalism was the dehumanization and criminalization of African men. And that's part of the reason why when I say marginalized genders, it's inclusive of men, because the particular way that African men are treated within colonial and capitalist societies, and one is in which they're completely stripped of any kind of human identity, where they're reduced to their body parts, and also the threats that they present to settler colonial society. Like, African men are basically treated like just criminals with big dicks. That's how it is. It's a very crude way of putting it, but that's how they are fucking treated in the mainstream, y'all. And I don't know how you could not call that gender oppression. Anywho. And then also another consequence of this deconstruction and reconstruction was widespread intercommunal violence. They literally reordered our societies in the most dysfunctional possible way, and then like slapped us all together. And obviously a consequence of that is that we are going to treat each other in extremely dysfunctional ways, because that's how they're teaching us to treat each other. That's how the system they created us pushes us to treat each other. So by intercommunal violence, I mean domestic abuse, child abuse, interpersonal abuse, conflict that is resolved through violence. All these kind of problems that were introduced through the process of colonization, through the process of the violent imposition of capitalism. So, like I said, I'm going to mention some historical examples. Let me look at the time. 35. Also, let me drink some water. Grazie. Okay. So, some examples of what I'm talking about, these deconstruction of indigenous African gender roles and the imposition of European capitalist gender roles. So Yoruba land, the invention of women. So I'm so sorry I cannot say this author's name. I'm working on my pronunciation of African names, but I'm going to put her name in the chat. She wrote a book called The Invention of Women, making African sense of Western gender discourses. And in that book, she says gender was not an organizing principle in Yoruba society prior to colonization by the West. So Yoruba land was in what became modern-day Nigeria, and this author is saying that gender was not an organizing principle in Yoruba society prior to colonization by the West. Before European colonizers came to that part of Africa, there actually was no clearly defined gender role of women. The people that Europeans came and later gendered as women owned property, held positions of leadership, and gender in particular, like in general, was not a way that society used to organize hierarchy, power, wealth. Gender was just point blank, not a way they used to organize society. But then European colonizers came and imposed a European colonial state structure in Yoruba land, and then they said, hey, you people, we have decided that this group of people is women and they can't own shit. The European colonial powers refused to recognize the leadership of the people that they defined as women. They stripped them of their land. They stripped them of their wealth. They defined and categorized that group of people according to their anatomy. They said, you appear to have vaginas, so you are women, you can't own shit. And they said that they were now subordinated to all men in all situations. They made them ineligible for leadership roles, and they stripped them of their wealth. Also, side note, the men in Yoruba land went along with it, because that is a very, very old story of Europeans using the strategy of divide and conquer, and people on the material benefit side of the divide being like, this seems all right, let me go with it, and then ultimately not working on the long term. So European colonizers came into Yoruba land, imposed the gender role of women upon a group of people, stripped that group of people of their power and their wealth, and made them subordinate to the people that they defined as men. That is one example of what that looks like in one pre-colonial African society. And hopefully it's becoming clear what I mean by gender as a social construct, by what I mean by Europeans came and destroyed pre-colonial indigenous African gender roles and imposed their own, and used those new European gender roles to dispossess African women and marginalized genders. So that is the imposition of the European colonial state structure in Yoruba land. And again, the book that I am quoting from is The Invention of Women by the author whose name I put in the chat earlier. So if we understand gender, oh wait, what do y'all say? What do you see? Louise Thompson Patterson has written on triple oppression as well. Like I said, sometimes people are like Kimberly Crenshaw invented intersectionality, and it always really bothers me because what she's describing, she just gave a new term to a very old concept. She didn't invent that shit. No one could possibly invent that shit. It's just like describing the material conditions of African women and marginalized genders. So how could one person be credited for inventing that when we've been observing our condition for hundreds of years? Like, props to Kimberly Crenshaw for like coming up with the word, but she did not invent the concepts underlying that word. They've been around for a long ass time because African women and marginalized genders have been observing our reality for a long ass time. Frances Beale touches on this as well in her essay Double Jeopardy, also in Toni Cade Bambara's The Black Woman in Anthology. Also, Max says she was trying to do research on Yorubaland prior to colonization and couldn't even find words like niece, sister, girlfriend, etc. Exactly. There was no role, gender role defined as women in Yorubaland prior to European colonization. It was Europeans, it was crackers, it was colonizers that came into Yorubaland and said, woman means vagina, and it means you can't own shit. And now again in 2021, there are people who call themselves revolutionary Pan-Africanists who claim it as an anti-colonial position to impose those European gender roles upon their own people by force. That is not anti-colonial, that is pure cracker politics, y'all. Anywho, so what are the implications of understanding gender as a social construct? Well, if we understand gender as a social construct, developed according to the structure, culture, and mode of production of a given society, it means that we don't actually have to accept these European colonizer capitalist constructions of gender. We don't have to accept cracker gender roles, y'all. We do not have to say that because a European hundreds of years ago said woman means you have a vagina, man means you have a penis, that's the only thing that can exist. We don't actually have to accept that. We had a whole motherfucking spectrum of understanding of gender before European colonization, and we can have that again. That is actually the truly African way of understanding gender. It also means that we can create and expand our own African constructions of gender. We do not have to take the European biologically based constructions of gender and hold up capitalism. We can make up our own shit if we want to. We can make up revolutionary African conceptions of gender and revolutionary African conceptions of gender roles. We do not have to accept what has been imposed upon us by force, what has been imposed upon us by violence. We can choose something better, y'all. We can choose something better. Like, according to European cracker, colonizer ass, white supremacist ass constructions of gender, the only thing that I can do as a woman is live under a man, have babies, keep the house. That is not who I am, y'all. That is just not who I am. I fight. I'm like an armed struggle kind of girl, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm a lead the revolution kind of girl. I'm not like a have babies, lay in the house kind of girl. I never have been. I never will be. But according to European biologically based constructions of gender, that's what I'm supposed to do. I reject that. I'm a revolutionary African woman. My place is on the front motherfucking line. I'm going to be holding a gun when the revolution comes, y'all. I'm not going to be holding a baby. And that is because I define my own gender according to revolutionary African understandings of the role of my people. That's it. So if we accept gender as a social construct, a whole universe of possibility opens up. If we accept gender as a social construct, we can immediately stop imposing through violence European understandings of gender and sexuality. We can instead say that we accept all African people, regardless of their gender identity, regardless of their sexual identity, as African people. We can say if you align with the revolution, it doesn't matter who you fuck, it doesn't matter who you identify, you are on our side and you are an African. That's it. Anywho, so interventions for our work. We must understand gender as socially constructed. We must accept that queer and trans and non-binary African people exist. They have always existed. They're not, aligned with white supremacy. They're not, counter-revolutionary just for existing. They're actually part of the struggle for African liberation. Their liberation is our liberation. They've been on the front lines leading. They will always be on the front lines leading. We don't have to push them out of the movement because Europeans taught us to do that. Absolutely not. Instead, we could push. Oh my God, no, Mac, I have to make the meeting. I got 17 more minutes. So if we accept that gender is a social construct and that African, queer, and trans and non-binary people are valid, then we can build revolutionary African organizations for African women and marginalized genders that are fighting for independent political power and self-defense. We can make the struggle for revolutionary Pan-Africanism inclusive of all African people. I always say the only Africans that are excluded in the fight for revolutionary Pan-Africanism are class traitors. Class traitors and sellouts. If you're like Barack Obama, if you're like Beyonce, if you're like Linda Thomas Greenfield, if you're like that, who's that fucking coon that leads the Department of Defense? Who fucking cares? But that guy sucks. If you're any of those people, You are not included in the struggle for revolutionary Pan-Africanism unless you commit class suicide, unless you turn against the empire. But if you are a poor working class African person, if you are a working class African person that aligned yourself with the masses of African people against colonialism, capitalism, imperialism, then you're coming with us, y'all. It doesn't matter what your gender is. It doesn't matter your sexual identity. All that matters is that you align yourself with the masses of poor working class African people. So the only people excluded from revolutionary Pan-Africanism are class traitors and sellouts. Everybody else is coming for the party. Anyway, and then also other interventions for work to build revolutionary Pan-Africanism beyond building revolutionary organizations for African women and marginalized genders is comprehensive internal and external political education campaigns about gender, sexuality, and patriarchy. Ultimately, we must understand, in order to win revolutionary Pan-Africanism, in order to win one unified socialist Africa, we must smash the fucking patriarchy, smash it. We must destroy capitalism and build socialism. We must destroy imperialism. We must destroy colonialism through revolutionary national liberation struggles. The people think always people think about revolution and think about dudes with guns, and there surely are some dudes with guns, but also revolution is about organizing every sector of a society across gender, across ages, across abilities, which means that revolutionary African women and marginalized genders have been on the front lines for the fight for African liberation and will continue to be on the front lines for the fight for African liberation, whether we are holding guns, whether we are teaching, whether we are training, we are going to be on those front lines. We were there during slavery. We were there during anti-colonial struggles in Africa and throughout the diaspora. We were there in the Black Power movement. We were there in the fight for reparations, and we're going to be there going forward, period. I did it. That was the P. Okay, what do y'all think? So many comments. Max says, no shade to people who identify with gender, but y'all could be so much freer and happier without this colonial version. I agree. I kind of feel like trans and non-binary people are from the future because they're just, oh my God. Let me just not get into that. But I agree. The European biological-based constructions of gender are like a fucking prison. It's a fucking prison. Sometimes I look at like cis-het relationships and I'm like, y'all even fucking like each other? Like, do you even like care for each other? Because it's like this battle of sexist shit. Like a constant power struggle, constant like button heads, and you're just like, damn, it seems exhausting. That seems exhausting, and you're just like playing roles that were predefined for you by a colonizer. Like, it's fucking weird. Anyway, tell your job you can't make the meeting. No, I'm gonna make it. Somebody go pull the fire alarm at a job. It would just be the smoke detector at my house. Ironically, Hollywood films use the image of the strong African woman to show the inferiority of Africans for not adhering to patriarchal European standards. Correct. One thing about European biologically based capital cracker ass gender roles, I keep saying different terms. I just want to press upon y'all that it's some cracker shit. But one thing about those gender roles is that African people have never actually fit within them. African women in particular, like cis African women, are like treated as like masculine, treated as like subhuman, treated as like unattractive, treated as like not living up to the embodiment of like femininity that's created by European constructions of what a woman is. Like, we don't actually fit within that identity. We never have. I'm like 5'10", like pretty big, dark skin, and like it's just not like, it's very clear to me that the image of women, like the Disney princess image of women, like the European like dainty image of women, like that was just not something that I was ever gonna be able to live up to. So like when African women, this African women in particular, are like transphobic or transmisogynist, when they like try to police the gender expression of trans and non-binary African people, I'm like, girl, like they don't think you're a woman either. So who the fuck are you to go to African trans women and be like, you're not a woman? The people that whose like gender roles you are violently applying to that person do not actually think you fit that gender role. They don't think you're a woman. So why the fuck are you doing that to another African person? Anywho, yeah. Cis black women, Erica says, cis black women are intentionally and constantly misgendered, so the investment in womanhood that's denied to us is wild. Like Michelle Obama, for example. Michelle Obama is a motherfucking sellout, married to a war criminal, but Michelle Obama gets called a man on a daily basis to this day. That woman has like fucking two kids that came out of her vagina, and she called a man every motherfucking day. Every day. And I also don't want to suggest that only people that have vaginas can have kids, or only people, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, people who are not women can have kids. but she is a woman and she had kids, and people are still constantly calling her a fucking man. And you know why? It's because she is a tall, dark-skinned African woman, and she does not fit the European construction of woman, and she never will. She made it to the side piece, or the first lady role, like the highest position for a woman in the United States. She made it to there, and they were still like, you're a motherfucking man, you're a monkey. Because she will never fit the European construction of woman. She never will. She never will. And she is far from the only African woman that's been misgendered in that way. Far from it. We do not fit into these European gender roles at all. We never have. Serena, yep. Ciara, yep. Wendy Williams, yep. I said side. I did. I read a story once, I think it was from Obama's book, about how he was like dating a European woman before. I appreciate y'all so much. Now we're going to move on to the rest of the show, and I'm going to wrap this up in 10 minutes. You better believe it. So next up, Comrade Ajamu Umi of the California chapter of the All African People's Revolutionary Party, also the person that recruited me into the APRP, recently released a book called A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence. It is a very short book. It is less than 100 pages. It is a very easy read, and I highly recommend that you go buy that book. It's available on Amazon.com. Just search for Ajamu's name, Ajamu Umi. Let me put it in the chat. Ajamu? I can't type at top. This is good because I can take a break from talking. So please search for that book. Please buy it. Please support revolutionary African cultural works. It's literally like he gives you like step-by-step instructions for how to organize a revolutionary community defense project in your community. He gives like background context about what Pan-Africanism is, why the African liberation struggle is a struggle against colonialism, capitalism, and imperialism, why Africa must be primary. Like, it's so good, and he does it in less than 100 pages. So please check that book out. It's under $10. It's very good. And then also, for folks who do not know, I am on the editorial team of Hood Communist. Hood Communist is a revolutionary African nationalist blog. There's a couple of editors in the comments on YouTube. Mac and Erica are also editors of Hood Communist alongside Ajamu and our comrade Ghazi from Black Hammer. And so the editorial team of Hood Communist is going to be on Comrade Ajamu's show this coming Sunday, April 4th at 4 p.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. Mountain time. And we're going to be having a panel discussion about revolutionary organizing. And we're also going to be doing some heavy promo for Ajamu's book. Let me see if I can put a flyer up really quick. Cool. So I'll show that again at the end of the show. But please, if you are free Sunday, April 4th at 4 p.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. Mountain time, tune into that panel to learn more about the book and also hear about how the editorial team of Hood Communists are all active revolutionary organizers in African revolutionary organizations doing work in real life to build African liberation and build Pan-Africanism. Other things happening. APRP New Mexico, we haven't talked about our work for a long time on the show. Oh yeah, also it's Hood Communist Thursday. I was going to talk about that at the end. But it's Hood Communist Thursday. There are new articles on the Hood Communist blog that you can read at hoodcommunist.org. I'll plug that again in a minute. But I also want to briefly give some updates on the work that APRP New Mexico is doing here in the community. We haven't done this section in a long time, but we've actually been doing a lot of shit. So we are planning to build a community garden and meeting space in a free lot that our comrade Celinda from Millions of Prisoners owns in the, what's it called? It's like the South Broadway neighborhood. But the intersection is Cesar Chavez, or Avenida Cesar Chavez and Arno Street. That lot that's right there behind that supermarket. We're going to build a garden there, a Pan-African community garden and meeting space. So stay tuned for news about that. We want to organize, we want this to be a community project. So we're going to be in that neighborhood knocking on doors and talking to people and getting them involved. We're going to have a cleanup day for that lot because it's been unused for a long ass time. There's some trash, y'all. There's some trash. So before we can build our raised beds and stuff, we got to clean it up. And so we're going to be announcing a public cleanup day soon that you can tune up for to help us out, to help us build out that space. Also, we have our Pan-African film series that happens on the second Saturday of every single month. The next one is Saturday, April 10th at 2 p.m. Mountain Time. We're going to have a double feature about Mama Assata Shakur. Assata Shakur, a revolutionary African woman, member of the Black Panther Party and the Black Liberation Army, currently living in Cuba under Cuba's protection. We have one film that is the news report from the day that Asada was broken out of prison, and is hilarious. Like, these crackers do not know what to do. They're like, where did she go? And then the second one is an interview with Asada, living in Cuba, talking about socialism and anti-imperialism. So it's a double feature, both films about Asada. It's going to be great. Tune in Saturday, April 10th at 2 p.m. Mountain Time. And then lastly, we are still doing our elder care program. We deliver care packages to African elders in the city of Albuquerque every single Saturday afternoon. We give them food, cleaning products, toiletries, masks, medications, and also political education. We put articles from Hood Communists in the care packages. So we are still doing that. We're going to continue doing that for the duration of the pandemic. If you know someone who needs a care package, or if you yourself needs a care package, hit us up, aprepnewmexico@gmail.com. Deliveries, again, every Saturday afternoon. Now to the close. I got 5 minutes. I'm probably going to go over. Let's see what I can do. Okay, so first and foremost, hashtag free hood communists. Free hood communists. Free hood communists. So recently, Twitter, raggedy ass Twitter, white supremacist ass Twitter, capitalist Twitter, suspended the hood communist Twitter account. They are trying to silence revolutionary African voices on that platform. So it's going to be nothing but fucking blue checks and crackers on there, y'all. Spreading reactionary fucking pro-imperialist politics. They got rid of us, man. They bounced us. But if you want to support us, we need you to use the hashtag free hood communist, tweet at Twitter support, and demand they unsuspend our account. Free us. Free us. All we did was be unapologetically revolutionary Africans. That's it. That's it. And that was too much for twitter.com because they're fucking crackers. So please tweet, use the hashtag free hood communist, and also go to hoodcommunist.org, scroll down to the bottom of the page, and sign up for our email list. Hoodcommunist.org, and that email list we control. We can say what we want. So if you want to get the news unfiltered, if you want to get updates every single week about the articles that are published on the site, sign up for that email list and allow us to contact you independently of these white supremacist capitalist ass platforms. Like, I swear to God, like, people will come in APRP to Mexico's mentions, hood communist mentions, and call us like straight up N-words, like hard R. And it's like no problem. Like, you report the tweet, it's like still there. They're still going about their business, hopping people's mentions being racist. People like whole motherfucking fascists planned the riot on January 6th at the Capitol building, like on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, openly. And we're allowed to do that. Whole ass Nazis are on those platforms going about their business, but we get suspended because we are revolutionary African people. We are socialists and communists. We are anti-imperialists, and Twitter don't like that because Twitter is capitalist and white supremacist. So please, go to hoodcommunist.org, check out the 4 new articles that were published today, and also sign up for our mailing list so we can go contact you directly without anyone trying to control what we could say. Damn it. Also, of course, this week, the trial of Derek Chauvin for the murder of George Floyd is unfolding. A lot of people are watching that. A lot of people are being re-traumatized and triggered because the U.S. justice system is a farce. It is racist. It is white supremacist. It exists to protect the U.S. ruling class and settler colonialism. It is not about providing justice for us. It never will be, never has been, never will be. It doesn't really matter the outcome of this trial, whether they make this one cracker a scapegoat or not. The fundamental nature of our relationship to the U.S. justice system and to settler colonialism and to capitalism will not be changed by the outcome of this trial. So I've not been watching it. I've been like reading the highlights. But like, I know regardless of what happens, this is not what our people need. No matter what happens, like a guilty verdict for Derek Chauvin is not going to advance the struggle for African liberation. No justice can come for the masses of African people from a system that was built on our backs and from a system that only continues to exist by exploiting us and by exploiting Africa. This system does not have the capacity to give us justice. I don't give a fuck about the outcome of this trial. They are dragging George Floyd through the mud. This man is dead. He was murdered in front of the entire world, and they are dragging him through the mud because that is how raggedy and fucked up the U.S. injustice system is. So remember, regardless of the outcome of this trial, our struggle remains the same. The African liberation struggle is one that is against the capitalist system, that is against the system of settler colonialism in the United States, that is against imperialism. No justice can come from a system built on our backs. It doesn't matter what they do to this one cracker. It does not matter. Anywho, so please tune in next week to our program. We do this every single Thursday. at 12 p.m. Mountain Time. Next week on the program, we're going to be talking about women, marginalized genders, and the African liberation struggle. Like I said, we've always been on the front lines. And next week, we will have the motherfucking receipts, y'all. We will have the receipts. Also, if you are hearing me talk and you are not active in an organization fighting for justice, please join the organization. If you're African, join the African People's Revolutionary Party. Email us at aprpnewmexico@gmail.com to get info on how to join. And thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for your comments. Have a great rest of your day and stay ready for revolution.
When we stand in the principles and we know where we want to go, we have the power and the will within our souls. We will choose who our friends will be, and we identify our enemies. We hold the keys to a new reality. Let us share the truth of our history. Acknowledge what we've done and feel the greatness from which we've come. Remember that a fruit never falls far from its tree. So like our ancestors, we must control our destiny. Self-determination. 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 So as we educate our children, tell the truth. Let us always think about the millions who came before and sacrificed their lives so that our mighty people would survive. And the glory of our past we soon